some time for your real first question. I'd like to turn Professor Berque. Very warm welcome to you at this university. And it's your turn to ask a question.
That's it. I would like to ask you 3 questions. The first one is about the pictures you have chosen for the cover.
Maybe you should put on your microphone.
Thank you. About the 2 different covers you have chosen, which represent 2 completely different kinds of cities. And what are the reasons for choosing this one and this one? And what is the common ground for these 2 pictures regarding your essential thesis? This is my first question. The second question is about the notion of representation, which you are using from the beginning to the end of your thesis. Knowing that there is a completely different conception of the role of art in Europe and in China, you write in your thesis that the role of the artist, the landscape artist in China, is not to represent or to reproduce or imitate nature, but to prolong the process of evolution or creation. Not creation, evolution is better. So, in that case, you cannot represent what is going on. Naturally, this idea of what's going on by itself, self-serve, this is the possible translation for the word zhejian, which means nature in Chinese, self-serve. And you can prolong that with your paintings or even with your poems too. And this is not at all an imitation or a mimesis of something substantial. There is no substance to be represented. So my question is about whether if representation is convenient in all these different cases. And the third question, when speaking of landscape, landscape for whom? It's a landscape for you who are looking at the movies representing the cities, but for the people living in these cities, it may not be a landscape. This is a point of view, a peculiar point of view from a researcher, a Western researcher, looking on something very exotic. But the inhabitants of these cities may not be living in a landscape, just living. So, landscape for home. This is my third and last question.
Hooggeëerde opponent, thank you for your 3 questions. The first question, the difference in both covers, and regarding my thesis. The first one is movement. What expresses the highway is that in our contemporary perception of the urban environment is always through movement. And movement creates temporality, and movement creates fragmentation. This is why the first cover that is chosen from the movie This One Story, Inventors, expresses that it's one of the topics of my research is how movement affects our perception of the environment, and it goes through all the concepts, through all the chapters. Because this movement creates this aesthetics of disappearance. You catch something that is just instant. It's based on this fragmentation of the experience. The second picture is there is movement, but you are not inside a machine. You are not outside, but it is being inside of it. And it has. I chose it. It's a picture that I made myself, so it's not coming from any source. It's my own experience. is my own eyes. And it expresses, it has, inside the spaces of perception that I named, it has an haptic experience, because actually it's like you're involved inside. It has also an instant space of perception. I think it has both, instant and haptic, not cinematic, because there's no narrative in it. And this is why I chose it, because it's my personal view, and I wanted to express this both, the haptic and the instant space of perception. The second question about the notion of representation in China, and that there is no substance in the representation. Actually, there is substance, but there is a substance that we cannot see. In Chinese representation, what the Chinese that were involved is in the breath of nature, the pulsating breath of life. And artists, before representing, actually they were feeling inside themselves the rules of nature. They were understanding, and they were painting from the mind. They were not painting appearances, but they were painting from the inside, how they were feeling. So the truth of the outside was in the inside, and it was a clear substance, a substance without matter. So my answer is yes, there is substance inside, but it's not a material substance, it's more a mental substance. And a mental substance that is true. In our Western culture, true is what you can see. If you cannot see, it's not true. And in Chinese culture, the prolongation of nature is in what you cannot see, but you can really feel like true. If you feel it, it's true, and it's there. The third, you also spoke about if this representation is convenient.
The word representation.
Sorry,
the concept of representation.
The concept of representation, if it's convenient. I think it's the representation is convenient for the person that is experiencing it. I think in China, the representation was not about showing us how the world was looking like. It was convenient in the sense that it was a kind of phenomenological experience in itself. The experience of painting and the experience of looking at the painting or reading the poem. You were living again that experience. So I think the representation was convenient. I mean, not the representation of appearances, but the aid to travel with the mind. So yes, was, as I said, it's a different concept of representation. Convenient, I think, in the sense that it was an aid, a help to travel, a mental trip. The third question, landscape for who? Is a city a landscape? A city can always become a landscape for any one of us. When I'm expressing the crisis in landscape is the crisis in the I, in the self. When we say we cannot grasp the cities because we don't know. We have a crisis in ourselves, and we don't appreciate, or we don't step and wait to look what we have in front of us. We don't give more qualities than the appearances. So the appearances, we cannot grasp it, so it's gone. So what happens when you stop and you wait, and you understand and you perceive what you're feeling in that moment? Also, although the moment is temporal, or the moment is a single second. A city can always be transformed into landscape. Depends on the self. Depends on any one of us. And anyone can be an artist. I mean, what is an artist? An artist is that person that stops and thinks, or stops and paints. So, in a way, it's a reflection, saying any one of us can create landscape is there. Whatever it is, it can be a known place, it can be highway, it can be shopping street, like in the picture, landscape is there. I wish my answer has satisfied you.
Thank you. And I would like to turn to Professor Graafland at de Universiteit Delft. Heel hartelijk welkom hier bij ons. It's your turn for your question.
Geachte collega, I'm going to ask you something about the culture of disappearance, which is a very central issue in your text. But I want to introduce it briefly. The question comes at the end, so
Okay.
it might be a little more convenient for you to know in advance what's coming. You refer quite a bit to Abbas, and he has written a beautiful book on Hong Kong. What he claims is that that there is a kind of tourist gaze in Hong Kong. So there is something that is what he calls subliminal, and it's behind that image. A lot comes from Furio and other writers. He claims this in his book: rapidly changing cities, cities without breaks. He said, Hong Kong, of course, is one. The unfamiliar, that is kind of half seen, was seen subliminally behind the scene of the familiar. Now, the idea of Abbas is that most of us will see what is present, what is there. So there is something that is hidden. There's a discussion on carrying the Freudian themes, déjà vu, etc. The culture of disappearance, and now I'm going to your book, does not only affect Hong Kong, you say, but all those Chinese cities in the drive for modernization, which I think I can agree with. Now, the modern period in China, to you in your work, starts at 1978, with the Beijing Film Academy that was reopened. You relate to traditional Chinese painting. My question is this: if we look at the films of what you call the fifth, or not only you, the fifth generation of Chinese filmers, they cannot relate, to my mind, to the Hong Kong filmmakers, because I think this is Abbas his topic. I think Wong Kar-wai's film can only be situated in Hong Kong, and I don't believe that the films you mention and discuss at length in your book, which is quite interesting, that fifth generation can use the same, let's say, notions or concept of disappearance as Abbas does, because they are still also related to landscape. Now you have an argument there, I know that, but my question to you is, do you really believe that the fifth generation can be understood and covered with that issue that you derive from the bus, which is a totally urban setting, while these filmers are still related to literally landscape, not dealing so much with cities? Could you explain it?
Jorge, here the opponent. Thank you for your question. I agree with you, there's a difference between Hong Kong movie making and mainland China movie making. And the reason is that mainland China, of course, they were very, there was a lot of control in movie making. There was no freedom. And also there was a strong connection with landscape representation. And the first movies like Chen Kaige, was Yellow Earth, was really strong connected with landscape representation. But when I refer about the culture of disappearance, maybe this culture of disappearance in mainland China and Hong Kong have different ways of approaching it. But for example, in San Jimo, when Shanghai tried, in that movie, there is a representation of nature in the city. There's a combination of both. But they use a kind of technique that is used in landscape painting, But this technique is related with disappearance also. Disappearance in the sense that they depict something that you cannot see. Atmospheres, light, for example, in the Shanghai Triad, they depict the light. In the first part of the movie, you have two parts of the movie. The first one is light. The main object, the main subject of the movie is the different ways of experiencing light. And the second one is wind. Only wind is the landscape. And everything happens, the narration through the wind. And these two elements, they are inserted in a kind of disappearance. They are telling us something that we cannot see, but the narration goes through these two elements.
Yeah.
Maybe they are not so connected with the city itself, but it's more the techniques of disappearance that creates this culture. In Hong Kong, movie making, this culture of disappearance is more in the city, in the matter of the city. The disappearance is more in the experience of alienation, that the framings are very short. It's a different type of technique. But still, those framings that are very short, they're telling us something that really we cannot know what it is. So it's the same concept of not knowing what you're in front of, but in different. Sixth generation in China, they are more connected with the city, much more. So they are more telling something grounded in the city itself. But the first movie also fifth generation, and also movie makers of fifth generation, they were painters themselves. So the connection with landscape painting was very, very clear, and with nature. So they were. And there was a strong political background in their movies using nature also. But there was a culture of disappearance, in the sense of the technique of disappearance. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I wish it's satisfactory.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have other